I'm going to show you how to take a really creative and exciting photograph using nothing more than a basic camera. You could even use a smartphone for this, a polarizing filter, and a laptop screen. We're doing something called photoelasticity. Photoelasticity is when you play with polarized light with your camera and you add some plastic to the foreground. What is polarized light and why does it produce such interesting results? Well, polarized light is light that comes at you from one direction. It's one light source going in one direction. So light from the sun, from ambient light in a room, and we've got some video lights here set up too, does not produce a polarized light. It's a light source that emits in all different directions. Laptop screens, on the other hand, or tablets or phones or whatever digital device you want to use, they typically produce light that is polarized, meaning it comes from the light source, the screen, in one direction. This is great because it allows you to filter out some of this polarized light. It allows you to only look at light from certain directions, and that gives some really interesting results. Let's set up our shot, and it's really simple. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my laptop. I'm going to open up Photoshop. I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to create a document the size of my screen, 2880 by 1800 pixels. I'm going to hit create on this, and the background color is set to white, and I'm going to save this to my desktop. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to have a white background on my computer. I just want it to be completely white. I want it to emit a white light. So I'm going to do this white light. And because I've saved it as a full screen image, I can open it up, and then whatever you're viewing this in, now I'm obviously doing this on a Mac. If you use a Windows, what you need to do is you need to open up this white image and you want to view it in full screen. So I use a Mac here and I did it in Photoshop, but I'm going to share this file with you, and you can even just Google, full screen white image in Google, and it will give you a JPEG image that's just pure white. Or just Google white and set it to view in full screen. It will work. I'm just doing it so it's exactly the same size as my screen because it's going to fit all the way across. So now that I have that set up, I'm going to do something that might surprise you. I'm going to lift up my laptop and I'm going to put it on its side. The reason for that is because I'm going to take a portrait photograph from the side. If I leave it like this, or if I leave it tilted back, it's really hard to put something in front of it, and I don't really want to put stuff on top of my keyboard. If I do it from the side like so, I can take a plastic champagne flute like this and I can put it in the middle, and although it doesn't look like much to the naked eye, the polarized light is going to see something very different. It's easier to put it here than it is on my laptop like so, and it also gives me more vertical room. So I'm doing this on its side. If you just have a tablet, you can just lay it flat and you can put something on top of it and you can shoot down on it. You can do the same with your phone, whatever works best for you. I find that I get a really good result by putting my laptop on the side like so. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up our camera. I've already decided I'm going to take a portrait photograph. So I'm going to put this into portrait orientation. You'll notice that the camera is set up on a tripod. It means that I can get consistent results every time, and I don't have to keep moving this camera around and trying to get back into the same frame as before. I can set up my scene, and as it's studio conditions pretty much, it means that nothing's really going to change, and all I have to do is just hit that shutter button and I'm done. I'm also going to manual focus. The reason for this is it allows me to set the focus, and then between shots, so long as I haven't moved anything here or here, I know that my focus is going to be the same, and I don't have to struggle to autofocus, because if you've ever tried to focus on something clear with a white background, you'll find that it's actually pretty difficult to do. So we're going to skip that entirely, and I can just put that in front of the screen there, and I don't need to worry about the focusing. You'll notice that I'm using a Canon 1300D here. The reason I've chosen this camera is to show you that you can take great photos with really basic gear. You don't need to worry about splashing cash on some really fancy stuff. But if you can see, you might notice that I'm actually using the Canon 24-70 f2.8L Mark II. Now that kind of goes against the whole point I'm making of, hey, you need no fancy equipment, you can use a cheap camera. The reason I'm using this lens is because I already owned a polarizing filter for this lens. It means I didn't have to go and get another one for my 18 to 55mm lens that came with the camera. If you did want to use the 18 to 50mm lens here, I mean, this is a 58mm versus a 82mm here. You just buy a different size polarizing filter and you can put it on front of your camera and it will get the same result. The lens doesn't matter, the camera doesn't matter. All that matters is that you have a polarizing filter that will fit on the end. And that polarizing filter will filter different light as you adjust it on the end, which we'll show you in just a moment, and produce different results. But finally, before we get started taking a photo, let's talk about setting up the camera to actually take good photos. Let's look at the shooting mode I'm on. I'm using manual mode. The reason for manual mode is because it's pretty much unlike any type of photography I ever do, and I want to have full control over that, so I'm just going to leave it on manual. I've set my shutter speed to 1/60th of a second. Because I'm using a tripod, that could actually be a little bit slower, but it just allows me to knock the camera when I take it, and I don't have to worry about any camera shake. I've set my ISO to 400 here. The reason it's 400 is it just gives me a little bit more light to play with, because it's going to be quite close. The object I'm shooting is going to be quite close to the lens. The depth of field will be a little bit shallower, so I want to have a narrow aperture for a deeper depth of field. So I've set it to ISO 400 and my aperture is set to f8 for a decent depth of field. As you adjust the polarizing filter, you may find that the scene gets darker and you may want to adjust your exposure. That's fine, that's to be expected. Not always necessary in my experience, but it's something to consider. When taking photographs like this, I like to utilize the live view function of my camera because it's going to allow me to see the scene, it's going to allow me to focus a little bit easier, and I don't have to get into the viewfinder, I can kind of sit next to it like so. Before we take any photographs though, it's important to try and cut out any ambient light sources. So I wouldn't do this outside, we're doing it inside, but we've got some video lights set up here, so we're going to turn this video light off now, and that's going to allow us to remove a reflection which is showing up on this side of the laptop screen. So this champagne flute is looking really good. We can get more creative, but I'm going to just take a photo of this first to show you what that looks like. I put that smack bang in the center of the scene. Check my focus. And I can take a photo. And we have a pretty cool image, but I want to get more creative. So I've got some extra plastic here. So I've got some plastic forks and spoons. And I think first of all, I will stick a fork in it like that. This is going into the background a little bit, so it's going to be softer as it moves further away, which produces a pretty interesting effect. Make sure your laptop screen's on. Adjust the composition slightly. That looks okay, but because of the angle that it's set to, you don't really see the colors and the shapes of that fork. So I might play with it a little bit further. Maybe I'll put it in. And I'm going to play a little bit further even still. What I like to do with a champagne flute like this is you can take it and put a couple forks in like so that they wedge against each other. That looks pretty good, but I want to adjust it slightly so it's sort of coming towards us and going away. Adds for a more dynamic shape. And that's a good starting point. We've got some interesting colors from the forks, but remember, we have a polarizing filter on the end here. I want to adjust this polarizing filter to adjust the colors that are coming through. As I change this, I can see that the colors are moving around, and it can turn into like a dark, deep purple background. And that's because I'm now polarizing most of the light that comes from this laptop screen out of the image. I can take another photograph like this. And the colors look a lot bolder now. I like that a lot. But what I would continue to do is I'd continue to adjust the ring here for the polarizing filter. That's going to change the polarization, and that actually produces some really cool results because it allows you, especially in live view, to see what your photo is going to look like without having to take it first. And we have, as I mentioned, almost studio conditions here. So I don't need to refocus, I don't need to redo anything. I can just adjust this and take a photo when I'm happy. And I would encourage you to experiment. I mean, we have plenty of different things that we can take photos of. So I'm going to switch this now, and I'm going to do one spoon in like that and another spoon in like that. And instead of looking at fork shapes, now we have this curvature of the spoon, which is going to absolutely bring in different results. In fact, I like that a lot. Maybe I stick them both out. Within just 2 minutes of playing around with some plastic utensils and some cups, I found a photo that I'm really happy with. I think the shapes, especially the contrast between the different angles of the forks, makes for some really cool colors, and I'm really pleased with it. Of course, I can carry on experimenting with the different polarization, but what I'd like to do is I'm going to take this plastic sheet. Now, this wrapped up some bananas we bought yesterday, and it works really well because what I can do is I can scrunch it up, and I know that it's now going to have loads of creases all throughout it, and I can bring it back out again. And I'm going to drape it over the camera screen. Now, to you and I, that might not look like much, but to my camera, with a polarizing filter on it, that's going to look really, really creative. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. So now we have a textured background, which I can continue to adjust just by changing the polarization. And if at any point you're not happy with how it looks, you can just keep adjusting. You can move the subject closer to the camera. You can keep adjusting this so different shapes appear. So you can just scrunch it in different ways. You will get different light. So by adding some more texture, I know I'm going to get some different results. And there we have it, some really interesting photographs. There is one extra step which you may want to try, and we're going to walk you through this now, and that is to invert the colors inside Photoshop. If you think about it, that is quite a drastic thing to do to any photograph you take. You know, black is white and white is black. It's going to be very extreme. However, because it's photoelasticity and none of the colors look like what we're seeing with the naked eye already, there's no reason why we can't go ahead and make those adjustments. So we're going to do that now. I'm going to import these photos and I'm going to walk you through that process inside Lightroom and Photoshop. Now I've brought these photographs into Lightroom. I'm looking at one of my favorite photos with the white background. You can see the results here. I will notice that it's not completely white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to make this white. I'm going to start, I think, by adjusting the highlights, make them a little bit brighter, so that just brings it out a little bit. Perhaps with the shadows I could move them slightly, make the whites brighter. There we go. We can bring that white all the way up. And now we have like quite a bright background. We want that to be as close to white as possible. You could even adjust the vignette, and you could add a white vignette in the corners like so. So now that that's pretty white, then we're going to go to right-click, edit in Adobe Photoshop CC. Now I'm going to edit the copy with Lightroom adjustments, because that means that everything I've just done is going to be included in this photo. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command-I. If you're using a Windows computer, it's going to be Control-I, but that is a shortcut to make the colors inverted. You can still see it's a little bit bright at the top here, but this can be fixed when we go back into Adobe Lightroom as well. So I'm going to hit save on that. It's going to take it back into Lightroom. We can see the image here, and just in the develop module I can then adjust the blacks, make those a bit darker, and make that stand out. And you can do this selectively if you'd like, using the different filters at the top. This isn't a Lightroom course, so I won't go into great detail, but you can see the results here. You can make dramatic changes. If I wasn't teaching this, that would take me less than a minute to complete. So you can make some real big differences to your photos. You can do this for all kinds of photographs. And as you select them, as you go through, you can see all of the different results. And of course, it helps sometimes to make some of these backgrounds a little bit brighter. So I like this photograph, but I think it could be brighter. So I'm going to take the whites here and I'm going to bring the whites up. And I'm also going to bring the highlights up. And I'm going to remove the vignette, which I think is already added. Like so. But I have to say, I think my favorite ones are these ones with the scrunched up background, because that's where you can start to get really creative with the colors. I think that one there is probably my favorite photo of the day. So a little bit of processing can help, but it's absolutely not essential. This photograph here, I'm not going to do anything to it before I publish it. I'm going to take this photo now, I'm going to put it on my Instagram, my Facebook, and I'm going to share it with my friends and see their reaction. I'm pretty sure they're going to love it, and I think that you should totally have a go at this, and I'd love to see the photos that you take. All I ask is when you're done, do us a favor and leave the photo below in the comments. We'd love to see them, get inspiration for ourselves, because then we can think of all the different creative materials, all the different plastics that surround us every day that we can use to create startlingly dramatic and beautiful photos like this, which so few people know how to do. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, please consider subscribing, because we're releasing new video content every Monday at 12 p.m. London time, so you can get your fix of photography every single week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.